Transfer of learning. The word transfer is used to describe the effects of past learning upon present acquisition. In the school laboratory and in the outside world, how well and how rapidly we learn anything depends to a large extent upon the kinds and amount of things we have learned previously. In simple way, transfer may be defined as the partial or total application or carryover of knowledge, skills, habits, attitudes from one situation to another situation. Transfer is a cognitive practice whereby a learner's mastery of knowledge or skills in one context enables them to apply that knowledge or skill in a different context. Because transfer signals that a learner's comprehension allows them to recognize how their knowledge can be relevant and to apply it effectively outside original learning conditions. Transfer is often considered a hallmark of true learning. Transfer of learning is the application of skill and knowledge learned in one context being applied in other context. To carry over habits of thinking, feelings, or working of knowledge or of skills from one learning to another usually is referred to as transfer of learning. Transfer of learning occurs when a person's learning in one situation influences his learning and performance in other situations. Transfer of training is concerned with the question of whether or not the learning of material A, say mathematics, aids, hinders, or does not affect the subsequent learning of material B, say physics or chemistry. A person learns through transfer to the extent that the abilities acquired in one situation help in another. Transfer is the application of carry over the knowledge, skills, habits, attitudes, or other responses from the situation in which they are initially acquired to some other situation. Transfer is generalization for it is extension of ideas to a new field. In education, transfer of learning or transfer of knowledge or transfer refers to learning in one context and applying it to another, i.e., the capacity to apply acquired knowledge and skills to new situations. There are three kinds of transfer: from prior knowledge to learning, from learning to new learning, and from learning to application. The issue of transfer of learning is a central issue in both education and learning psychology. There is probably a subtle difference between transfer of learning that addresses what is learnt in school and transfer of knowledge that addresses the general issue of applying knowledge to new situations. Transfer of knowledge is very much related to the problem of knowledge integration, knowledge application, and knowledge use in the real world. Examples: knowledge of Urdu may help students to learn Punjabi. Knowledge of French may help students to learn Spanish. Learning mathematics prepares students to study physics. Learning to get along with siblings may prepare one for getting along with others. A creative writing student takes a course on Shakespearean drama. Over the course of the semester, she continues to write her own play, drawing from techniques and structures throughout her coursework. Teachers teach how to do percentages. Their students can solve percentages problems in class, but they can't determine the final price of a sale item in the store, given the discount amount. Types of transfer of learning. There are three types of transfer of learning. Number one, positive transfer. When learning in one situation facilitates learning in another situation, it is known as positive transfer. Knowledge of mathematics facilitates to learn physics in a better way. Driving a scooter facilitates driving a motorbike. A sportsman playing football plays volleyball as nicely. Number two, negative transfer. When learning of one task makes the learning of another task harder, it is known as negative transfer. For example, left-hand drive vehicles hindering the learning of right-hand drive. Herein, learning of one task makes the learning of a second task harder. Learning shorthand by Denton method may cause interference in subsequent learning by Pittman method. The negative transfer is also called habit interferences. One form of positive transfer is bilateral transfer or cross transfer. Practice in using right hand while handling a machine in the factory may help handling by the left hand. Number 3, neutral transfer or zero transfer. When learning of one activity neither facilitates nor hinders the learning of another task, it is a case of neutral transfer. It is also called a zero transfer. For example, knowledge of history in no way affects learning of driving a car or a scooter. In this case, the learning of one subject does help the learning of another. There may be zero transfer between language and mathematics. Surface and deep learning. According to John Hattie, it's a very important distinction between surface and deep learning. Surface learning is very much about the idea, the content, the knowledge, and the information. The deep learning is when you relate or extend or transfer that knowledge. Certainly, in many schools and many systems, there are both those two parts. The content and how we relate and extend that content is critical. But the differences between surface and deep learning are important. Deep learning first requires recall and use of surface knowledge and skills. Traditional approaches like memorization and rehearsal can equip students with these foundations. But the problem is that teaching and learning often stops at the surface. Robin Gillies from University of Queensland research shows that student-centered approaches to teaching that change and develop students' thinking gets better student learning outcomes than the more traditional teacher-directed information transmission approaches. For teachers to make this shift, it's important to have the capacity to reflect on one's own practice and to be familiar with evidence-based research and to effective teaching. To be effective, learning must be active. Effective and active learning are interdependent and one cannot occur without the other. They are two sides of the same coin. When learning is effective, students are actively engaged and they are motivated. They accept responsibility for their learning, work together to achieve shared goals, listen to others' ideas, and support one another through challenges. The effectiveness of active learning is not limited to the academic or cognitive, but extends to social and personal development.